And you can mute yourself.
I don't know if you wanted to rename yourself too, but.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Welcome to the help desk. We'll be starting momentarily. Hello and welcome to today's help desk. Meet the consultant. My name is Mixolydia Tyler. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the programs manager at Arts Business Collaborative. We are super excited to have everyone here watching this conversation live or checking out the recording later. So to start, I would love to share a little bit about what is Help Desk. Help Desk is a free business consulting program offered by Arts Business Collaborative. This is a three-month long program in the fall, running from September 14th until December 2nd. And it's designed to provide strategy and individualized consulting free and business courses and one-on-ones with our consultants, as well as these lives. Meet the Consultant, where we get to have conversation with our consultants in real time. We really are focusing on helping POC individuals and organizations and larger 501c3s to support communities of color, especially those belonging to Black, Indigenous, and Hispanic communities. This live Meet the Consultant is being recorded and will be posted as soon as we're done. We would like to take the time now to thank our sponsors. We are being supported by M&T Charitable Foundation, Ameriprise Financial, and the Mertz Gilmore Foundation. We would also like to give a special thanks to the Brooke Ottaway of the Nicholas B. Ottaway Foundation. Coming up next, ABC is working and actually has already launched our next program, which is our Fiscal Sponsorship Program. ABC provides fiscal sponsorship and technical support for businesses who do not already have 501c3 status. And you can learn more and gain more information about how to connect with us and to find ways of being supported through the Fiscal Sponsorship Plus program by emailing us at programs@artsbusinesscollaborative.org. So now I'm very excited to introduce our guest consultant for this evening, Ronteau Coppin. Ronteau Coppin is a human resources consultant based in Charlotte, North Carolina. Ronteau marries her strategic and operational expertise with people-related matters and company culture to optimize employee experience and strategy. Ronteau Coppin has spent her 8-year career working with nonprofit organizations with a focus on operations, project and people management, and human resources. She is a true people person who is passionate about fostering positive and fulfilling work environment. In her current role as people and culture manager, Ronteau strategizes to ensure that the organization has the people and organizational culture it needs to obtain its goals and objectives. She has extensive experience within working with the employee life cycle and engagement initiatives, remote first work culture, and working with startup nonprofits. Ronteau wholeheartedly believes that employee engagement must be intentional and centralized, as people will always be an organization's best resource. Before joining the human resources field, Ronteau also held various operational positions, including office management, project management, and systems and procedures development at several education-based nonprofit organizations. Ronteau is a graduate cum laude from Mount Holyoke College with a bachelor's in Africana Studies and a minor in philosophy. She received her MBA in General Business Management from the Metropolitan College of New York, and I am excited to invite my friend and colleague into the space today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can get into it. Welcome, Ronteau.
Hi, Mixie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. There's so much to talk about. Let's get started.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited. So I really enjoyed talking with you earlier around human resources and how it's kind of like the forgotten need for businesses and organizations, but even as creative individuals and thinking of ourselves as a business, that could be something that we put on the back burner and don't think about. And so I just want to know about your journey. How did you come to really, loving the ins and outs of managing people and working in this way with an organization?
For sure. As you mentioned, I have been in people ops my entire journey. And so that was either project management or ops or HR for sure. And so I've always just been a person who liked to help people. And so in one capacity or another, I was just very much centralized in process management, which always revolves around people. And I would say that HR kind of found me. So I was in general ops. And so that was I'm always going to be the person in the background, making sure that everything runs smoothly. And so a lot of the time that doesn't directly mean being in the HR role necessarily, but when you have like an office, like, so when I was an office manager, people made the office, right? And so in a way, I wasn't directly in HR as yet, but once we were remote, it was like, okay, this opportunity is here. You should actually channel all of your, like, you are already a people person, like just go ahead and dive into HR. And so the opportunity came up for me and I shifted into HR officially. And so I was an HR manager and now I'm a people and culture manager. But essentially, like I said, I always wanted my work environment to be tip top, whether I was a manager or not. And so I feel like people bring different things to work. And when several people are working for an organization, all of those nuances then make a org culture. And so for me, going into HR was very natural because I always wanted the best for my own like workspace, but also for other people. And so that's how I'm here. That's how I got into HR. As you said previously, very much office management, project management. It's always like policy development for me. That is probably one of my sweet spots, just writing. So that lends itself very well to HR.
I did not know that. That's really cool. Yeah. Okay, writing.
Yeah.
Listen, writing policies are, I mean, that's to have a mind to be able to think through every possible scenario before that happens. I think takes a special person and a special way of thinking. And so my next question is, what is the biggest thing you notice when you are being asked to consult or, you know, in a people culture way or in a human resources way? What is the biggest maybe like question or things that an organization will overlook when thinking about HR?
I think you started off by saying that HR is often forgotten. It's the thing that like, oh, we'll get to it when we're like 50 people or whatever. And so my thing is you need HR from day one. And if our interpretation of HR is just, oh, that's just payroll or that's just like compliance and policies and things like that, then you kind of lose out on the strategic side of HR, which to me is very central, right? That's how you get to talk about culture. That's how you get to talk about people enjoying their work, people being motivated, people engaging, people staying, right? Because you could get somebody to come, but you want them to stay and you want them to grow. You want them to learn stuff while they're with you and not it just be a take, because a lot of the times employment can be like that. But I would say that what's really important, I find, is that HR tends to be, especially at the start of a new business, you tend to be very reactive instead of proactive. So as you said, you wait until a problem or a situation comes up to be like, oh my God, we need to make a policy, right? So in the event of, let's say you started your company and you have a few employees, but you never really set up a, let's say, bereavement policy. And now, unfortunately, somebody passes away. You don't have a policy. So what's to say that this person, and they might need the time, right? They might need a month, but what's to say that like you're okay with that? And so I think what's also important too is for the owner of the business, before you even engage other like people that you are paying, you kind of want to have a general sense of what your values are, what your boundaries are, what you will or will not accept, both for yourself as the owner, but also as an employee as well, right? Like you are your own employee, so you don't want to be harming yourself and then others at the outset. So I think to answer your question in the most roundabout way, I would say that people tend to be reactive instead of just, as you said, trying to imagine, okay, at minimum, we need a policy on attendance, a policy on, and of course, it depends on the type of business that it is, right? That will determine what the lines are. But you kind of need to do that work from the outset, or else policies will create themselves by accident, and then you can't undo it, right? You can't get, if 5 employees are already accustomed to wearing what they want or showing up however they want or when they want, now you have to unteach adults behaviors that you could have just told them from the outset. So it's really important to get that staff handbook, even just drafted, right? Like generally you want to have some policies in place with that before you employ anybody.
You just said something, all of what you said is so valuable. The thing that just stuck with me is that I've never thought about this for myself either, but just like having an idea of what am I valuing in myself when it's just me working in my business. Because I do believe, especially as creatives, and creative organizations, when you're starting out, it's one or two of you, and you're willing to do the work, of course, but then there's burnout that can come. And I know, like, for me, like, I wonder how beneficial it would have been for me to sit and talk with someone like you before I even, started saying, yes, I can do these things. I can teach this thing. I can do that thing, as a creative business, and having some things in place so I don't overstep my own boundaries. So my next question is really around this idea of, what are some things that if I'm starting out, even if it's just one person, that I need to be thinking about when it comes to, from an HR standpoint?
I'm sorry, what's the one thing?
Yeah. What are some things, like, is it just getting the handbook, or is there values? What are some things that I need to be thinking about if I'm just starting out, that, like, maybe I'm thinking that I don't need to because it's just me?
Right.
What are some tools that I should have in place, or some conversations I need to have with myself and maybe my couple of business partners?
Yeah, I would say that underestimating the amount of time that HR work will take at the start is actually going to burn you out, right? So the amount of time that it's going to take you to come up with your core values, your mission, your values, like doing a business plan before you get to the business work is very essential. I feel like a lot of times, or at least conversations that I have with my friends, is that they just have this great idea and they just start. And I'm like, oh, baby. But like, how do you know who you need? How do you know when
Right.
you stop? How do you know when you need to shift if you just dive right in? Right. And so to me, like, I do HR day in, day out. And that is work. HR is work. Right. And so to think that you can, like, it's nice in the beginning to say, oh, yes, I'm going to pour 25/8 into my business. I'm not going to sleep. I'm going to do all. You're going to burn out. Your body is going to shut down. It's not fun. Right. And so to me, it's like you have to understand that waiting. So the time has to get put in at some point, whether you do it at the beginning or whether you have to pause your business work to tend to HR, it has to get done. And so you don't want to be in a position where you just have random people filling in HR tasks, right? Because then there's some holes that inevitably were created, or you do something illegal. You don't want to do anything
Yo.
illegal. And so to me, it's like, it's nice to have the drive and the passion and the motivation at the start, but I think it's more beneficial to take the time to be at zero, to be like, okay, here are the things that I need. Here are my values. Here's my mentor, maybe a second one that I can bounce ideas off of. Here is my like plan to check in with myself 3 months in, 6 months in. Same way with you would do with a new employee. I think you have to treat yourself as a new employee, even if you're not paying yourself yet. And so you don't want to have to lose the momentum in month 7 because you didn't think about policies and procedures at the top, or compliance issues at the top, or how you pay people at the top. Like, those things create so much more harm in the long run and can do a lot of damage to a business if it's not given the love and attention that it deserves.
I love that, checking in with yourself. Yeah, because you may be working in a way that's just not helpful, and you need to restructure the way you're thinking about your policies and what you say yes to, and how, whatever, like, I think about, like, the policy of turnaround, like when I'll respond to, or how I'll respond to an offer that's on the table. And I think having that in place early as an HR thing of, like, saying, I will take this much time to turn around a response to a job offer or an inquiry offer, is powerful. And it may need to change. I may be real excited to be, getting work when it's in the beginning, but also, like you said, that burnout is real. And so being able to check in is really a thoughtful way, even when it's just one person, that HR can really help you navigate your business. One of the things I really want to delve into is because you've been talking about this and mentioning it, and I want to get into the deep heart of values. You've been sharing that it's important to have values. Can you define what are values and how they show up, and how they show up in an HR standpoint? If we're saying we're prioritizing values, what are they and how do we create them?
Sure. So values, to me, the way I envision values, or the way that I kind of think about them in the way that I work, is they actually tell me how I work, right? So let's say an organization has a value of trust, then I am not going to be micromanaging you all the time. I'm going to trust that you can do the job, right? Because I hired you for your skills. So I don't necessarily have to micromanage every part of a project. If I say one of my values is, and this one is, I think Morgan was on last week or whenever, DEI is a huge one these days.
Yes.
If you are saying that you as an organizer, your company is valuing DEI, then first of all, we need to talk about equity in a real kind of way. It can't just be like, oh, well, everyone gets the same thing. That's not equity, right? That's equality. And people don't understand the difference between the two. I'm not here to talk about DEI though, so I'm gonna leave that to Morgan. I'll go type into Morgan's video. But also, like, it just tells you, if I am centering DEI, I should see that in the policies that we uphold. If one of my values, let's say, is respect or fun, right? If I want my organization to feel fun and be exciting, then our meetings are always going to have some kind of like game, or we are not going to be so rigid, like you have to show up at this meeting at this exact time. And of course, timeliness is very important, but it's the way you work. And so I think that a lot of the time, I was having this conversation just the other day, people tend to write their values for an org very aspirationally, when really and truly you need to write them based on how you function. So if you are not functioning in a way that is that's upholding integrity, like if you are lying to your employees, if you're lying to your stakeholders, baby, your job, there's no integrity there, right? The honesty is not there. And so you have these aspirations and you put these things on your website and you're like, yeah, these are our values. And then you wonder why the people come to the work and then they don't stay, right? Because you're lying up front about the things that kind of drive the way your business functions. And so all of that to say, when you're starting out, of course, like I said, change is going to happen, right? Like you're going to think we're going to operate, let's say, using tools like Zoom. And then you realize, actually, Zoom doesn't really work for me. We are better off on Google Hangouts. It's okay to make those types of shifts. But when it comes to values, I feel like it's one of those things, or it just helps you to uphold your mission. So if your mission is not clear, then you're going to have an issue defining your values and the vision, right? And so I think that people really need to think about how they want their employees to feel, but also how they want external parties to feel when they interact with this particular business. And so that, when you imagine that, then you can be like, okay, yeah, actually, one of our values, or one of our very, very core values, is going to be respect, because I'm going to accept what you bring to the table. I'm going to respect your vision, your ideas and your input. And we're going to have, maybe tough conversations. But if our baseline is always going to be founded on respect, then that automatically determines how we talk to each other, how we engage, how we don't engage, the things we choose to share, things like that. So values is one of the things that we could talk about forever, but I think that it's, in terms of how it relates to HR, again, HR is going to be creating policies that reflect these values. And so again, if we have, let's say at my organization now, we're very empathetic in the way that we operate. And so never is there going to be a time that we say, oh, you're sick? That's unfortunate. You ran out of your sick days. Come to work. It's not happening, right? Because we value people. And so we want people to feel that they can come to work as themselves. They don't necessarily have to pretend. And so we have the policy that, like, talk to your manager and clear whatever you need to clear, but it's not so rigid where it's like, you have to show up. I don't care if you're dying, kind of a thing. So your policies are going to reflect your values. And if they don't, I would say that's the place that you start. If your business is already started, you have employees, you have a handbook, I would look at the handbook and say, does this uphold respect? Does this uphold accountability and transparency and all the buzzwords that we like to say that our businesses are upholding? But when you get to the heart of what you expect for your employees and what they can expect from you, that's when you really see if there is a nice meld.
Here's a question. Can your values, when you're thinking about them, can they change? Can they grow? Because I heard you say, it's about what you are actually doing. And so if you're not, is there room to have that conversation with yourself and thinking about HR, having a conversation with an HR consultant that's like, listen, I want to value this, but I'm not here yet. How does that work?
I mean, I really think it's about being honest. And so again, like I think we're kind of set up to imagine the perfect moment of your business. Like, all right, boom. Once I get to X, Y, and Z, then I made it or whatever. But the reality is that takes time. It takes a lot of shifts. It takes a lot of people coming and going. It takes you yourself having to be like, this is different than where I started. And that's okay. So to me, I think what's really important, and I wanted to spend some time talking about this, is that you want to kind of define, or at least get a rough draft of what your mission, your values are before somebody else gets to decide that for you. You don't want to bring people in to your organization. And as I said, right, like you bring one person in, 10 people in, 100 people in. Once there is that mix up of individuals, if they, depending on how they behave, how they interact, all those things kind of make company culture. And so your culture upholds these values. And so culture doesn't change overnight. Values also can't change overnight. They're real slow. And then they just pop up. And that's okay. But I think that once you're intentional about, all right, y'all, we actually cannot, and this sounds so crazy, right? We can't uphold integrity anymore because we are, and maybe in a case where you actually have to be super confidential about everything, then it would be real crazy to say transparency is one of your right. I would hire you because baby, you have to share my information, right? Like, and so I think that people just have to be honest with what the mission of their org is, what the org is going to be doing versus what they're not. And a lot of the times you come into your business thinking, I'm going to offer XYZ services. And really and truly, you can only offer X. And so then the values that were attached to Y and Z have to drop off, or they have to change in some way that makes you keep your eye on a North Star. Because what you don't want to do is just be doing any and everything. And then you're like, what is my sweet spot? You want to have your niche and be real good at it instead of just saying, I can do it all.
Yeah. And I think what you just shared is like that, getting a rough draft, that having that on the onset and knowing like, and just laying it all out and then saying, okay, so what can I actually do right now? And how do my values align? And then what is a policy that I'll put in place is a really great way of planning. And I, instead of thinking, well, my mission is this, and I'm just going to do it all. Right. And kind of figuring out as things kind of, move, like without moving, without people, without doing, really sitting down and saying, what is the mission, and being honest with yourself and having a conversation with someone like you, or at least sitting down and like looking at things from an HR lens is super important in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's also to me, why I really, I like HR a lot, because there is that, like, you get to see the continuity, you get to see the growth, right? And so when you are, especially when it's your own business, you are giving it your all. And of course, if you are still working for someone else, that can be a challenge too, where it's like, okay, I'm working my 9 to 5 and I can do this in the nighttime. You don't want to, you still have to show up, right? For your 9 to 5 right now. And so
Right.
I think that, to me, I like to be able to say, oh, wow, we used to have this policy. We wrote that. We need to change it. So case in point, everyone went remote because of COVID. And so naturally, some policies automatically had to change. So if someone was working at an organization that you had to be in the office every single day, regardless, right? Of course, automatically that changed in COVID.
Right.
Everybody went home. Some places are now doing like a hybrid thing. Some places are like, no, you have to come all the way back. But when you learn and grow as an organization, you get to make these changes. And so now there are organizations and companies who are like, actually, we did really well when we were remote. We can stay remote if that's okay with y'all, right? And so you want to get to a point where you're like, this policy worked for us in this time. And now that I have changed as an individual, the org has changed. Outside forces cause us to change. You don't want to be like, well, this is what we said, and this is what we're going to do forever. You're going to stunt your growth that way. And so I think it's very, very important, like to be able to keep track of, wow, we started with 3 people. And at that time, we said no one will ever work remote. Then we grew to 50 people and everyone was in the office all the time. And then COVID hit and we were like, we don't have a choice but to send everyone home. But now that I'm not going to say COVID is done because it's not, but now that like people are going back and hybrid is an option, you don't have to be like, well, we are reverting back to what we did in 2015 because it worked. When you clearly learned over the last 2.5 years, people work fine at home, or people have said to you, hey, I actually like working at home, or hey, actually, I need to be in the office, right? You get to make business decisions based off of real life and based off the people that are in your organization. And so I think a lot of the time we kind of hurt ourselves when we feel like we have to stick to what we said in the beginning, and you don't. Because to me, if you don't change, then something ain't right. But you don't have to, but I think you should be open to it.
Yeah. And that comes back to your point earlier about that checking in and evaluating so that you understand. And this
Those
is also,
assessments are crucial.
yes, this connects back to what Morgan talked about last week, Dr. Morgan Jenkins, about pivoting. And I think even even these ways when we're thinking about policies, that they can pivot, they can change.
Yeah.
But if you have to take the time to evaluate, I have a question. It's kind of centered around values, but also kind of thinking about the scenario of creatives or creative organizations that have creative employees. Something that I realized is that a lot of times you have employees who are multifaceted, right? Multidisciplinary. They are performing and they're doing work for your organization. And maybe you yourself are doing the same things. What are some values that maybe need to be in place for that particular type of worker who is doing multiple things for their art as well, but also putting in time and energy into a business that maybe has a creative angle or serves a community that they want to be serving?
I think one of the things, so I feel like a lot of arts-based businesses have to be community-based. If you are not, then it could work. I think it could work, but I feel like more times than not, you are doing your art for the purpose of someone else's enjoyment, your own, or other people that are paying you for this particular thing. And so I find that when you think about who you are serving, when you think about who you want your customer to be or whomever, I think that helps you to decide what we should value. So in the event where like, your customers are, or at least you are a painter and you're selling your artwork or whatever, you want to make sure that the person buying this art from you, or even if they're not even buying it, they're just engaging with it for a moment. You want that they feel what it is that you kind of put into it. And so if it's that I want my art to bring people together, then one of your values is always going to be something along the lines of community engagement, or some kind of engagement is going to be super central to how you build out your business. Maybe you have maybe it's built into your business plan that every third Friday you have an open house or something like that, because you are centralizing bringing people together to have conversations about art, right? Whereas if this is something like performance art, you want people to be engaged in a different kind of way. I think you want to think about it. I don't know how else to say this, but besides, it's about the engagement. And so your value just might be high engagement in whatever way, whether that's social media, whether that's in person, whether it's how you even share this art with the world. You want to think about how this person will feel when they engage with your piece, but also like what you would hope that how they might interact with you. So for sure, it's community based, it's engagement based. I'm pretty sure love could be a strong value. Like you don't want to do any kind of work when you're like, all right, well, I'm just doing this because I do it. Like I genuinely love what I do. And so it makes me wake up faster, maybe not faster, but it makes me enjoy logging in right. to do my job because I enjoy it. Like I find joy and passion in helping people navigate their day to day. And so in the same kind of way, you want that the values that you put out bring you yourself joy, but also can that is felt through and through. It has to be people centered for me, at least every time. Because if it's not, then it's kind of hard to show people where they fit in with your business.
And I like that you started from the owner, the individual who's doing the work and how they want that work to be communicated or felt by the communities they serve, because then it's easier to find people, even if they are multidisciplinary and juggling a lot of things, that they will be attracted and want to work because their value, it's in alignment with their own personal values as creatives as well. So I like that.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the end. You think about, all right, if I'm ending with this really big production, how do I get there? And what do I need to get there? How am I going to make all the people that I employ feel engaged and feel like, actually, I want to show up 100% because y'all make me want to do my work that much more. You want your employees to be motivated. You want them to be engaged. You want them to stay. You want them to bring other people. And all of that comes down to how you build your culture. And those are very intentional decisions, right? And you can't depend on someone else to decide or do that for you. You kind of have to do that at the outset. Kind of like how, I mean, I don't know, for me, like I worked in an office pretty much my entire life before COVID. And so a lot of the times you will go into these different offices and you find, oh, wow, like there's wonderful, you say culture here, but really it's the office culture. We got great coffee, we got couches, we hanging out, we watching movies. But then when everyone went home, it was like what is our culture now that we don't have an office? And so now you got to think about, okay, well, how do I make you feel? How do I still make us feel connected, even if I'm in Charlotte and y'all are in New York or whatever? How do we keep the feeling of we all belong here? We all can give something, even when we're not in the same shared space. And so I think COVID really brought a lot of things that we took for granted to the forefront to be like, everything kind of has to be intentional, right? Do we make people come on video or not? That's a choice, right? That makes people feel drained sometimes. Or are we expected to be on calls from 9 to 5? Like that has an impact. It's the little things that you don't think about that can fester. And so again, you want to think about, all right, what's best? And maybe it's not best for everyone because you can't satisfy everyone, but you want to make sure that your policies and your procedures match your actions. Otherwise, there's going to be some rah-rah in your people and in your leadership. And that creates a lot of discomfort and uncomfortability.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears, kind of staying in the same, but I really want to tackle this question, and I've been asking all the consultants, how, and I think, yes, I think definitely in this time, kind of connecting to what you were saying about like DEI work and like the all of what that entails in a business. But I think that for people of color, that are running their own businesses or serving, Indigenous communities, Black and Brown communities, it has been a challenge. Even more so, it's always been challenging, but it's even more so a challenge, I think, in this time, because there's a real felt kind of these boundaries, or I would say lacks of access is really being found. And a lot of businesses have had to either pivot or end. I know I have some friends in business that they could not sustain through this time. And I think that there is a general frustration of realizing the business, how much of the business world is just, it's a racialized system, right? And it's designed to not necessarily take into consideration Black and Brown bodies and businesses and business designs. And so as an HR consultant and working at people and culture, what are some ways or things to be thinking about of how to navigate the frustration or maybe the difficulty? I mean, I think that it manifests itself sometimes in just like retention in your business, keeping people on board when there's just lack of access to capital, or if things have changed, and so what you could provide for your employees has changed. And how do we, what are some things to be thinking about in dealing with the boundaries that are kind of sometimes working against us?
Yeah.
Or barriers is a better word, that are working against us when we're as Black and Brown people.
I think there's a lot of things to say here. So for one, I think that it's very important to have your core group of people, right? And so it's hard to do anything when you are operating as self. So if I were to navigate my entire life on an island, it'd be very challenging. And so in the same kind of way, you don't want to navigate your business by yourself. So even when you're at the start, even if you have 100 people and COVID just hit you, you need to figure out how you're going to adjust. You need to have the mentors, your close core people that you can go to have some real honest conversations. And you don't want to, I think we tend to, especially as Black and Brown people, we tend to want to be the superhero. We're going to figure it out. We're going to do everything. We're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
And that can be really taxing. And it also just does a disservice, right? Because my thing is, you want to be, or at least for me, what's beneficial in these circumstances where it's like, oh man, I have to change my benefits. You want to be honest with people. I think where we fall is that we do a lot of covering up because we don't want to show weakness, or we don't want to show frustrations. We don't want to show all of the things that have the negative connotations, because we're just always supposed to be up. We're just always supposed to be not perfect, but have everything under control. And the reality is that that's not real all the time. And so having the group to go to, very important. Being honest with yourself and your employees about what is doable versus what's not, also really important. And the other thing too is that you never realize who is amongst your circle if you're not having conversations with people. And so everybody knows somebody. So in the case of, oh man, like we need to start and do some HR work. If you just poll your immediate family or your friends to be like, oh man, I really need to get a handbook created. Where do I start? And so even if they don't point you to someone, they know something, some kind of nugget to help kind of guide you. And so we tend to want to keep our dreams and our visions to ourselves, but it's really helpful to have little conversations to get nuggets like, oh, let me head this direction. Oh, let me make this next right instead of this left, because I remember someone saying X, Y, and Z. In terms of lack of resources, because that is just a systemic thing.
Yes.
I think that there are a lot of resources that are either in a rabbit hole on the internet, like it's not an easy Google, like you have to be like very specific in your Googling, or you have to know somebody that knows somebody to like go to this particular website.
Correct.
I think resources is always going to be a thing. I think that we have to go the extra mile in looking for resources, or straight up asking for investors to put their money where their mouth is, right? You can't be on your website talking about I support DEI and you have nothing to show. I will be your guinea pig, right? Like I will be the one.
Right.
You got to put yourself out there. I think that we are we can be shy sometimes because you don't want to mess up. You don't want to be the first, because being the first is scary, right? So, but I think that it's really important to seek out resources, seek out people, start with your immediate network, your community, whether it's at work or whomever. Sometimes people tend to gatekeep information. That's very annoying. But at the end of the day, someone is going to know something to help point you in the right direction. You got to find the people who will want to see you succeed beyond anything. And I mean, the last thing I'll say is that it's very easy to take systemic injustices personal. It's very easy to do that because we are emotional people, as we should be. But I find that it's easier to just be uncomfortable and discomforted than to like use that as fuel to keep going. Like, do everything in excellence. It takes more time to be upset, disgruntled, than to be like, you know what? I'm going to have this moment. I'm going to give myself the day, and then I'm going to jump back on tomorrow and keep pushing. You know, it's sometimes it is important to take that pause to say, business is not working for me right now. And that's okay. I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to pour into myself as myself and not as business owner, Ronte or whomever, and just make sure that I'm okay. You can't pour from an empty cup. As an individual, as a business, it's not going to work. So I think reflection is super, super important. Reflection doesn't create money. It doesn't create resources, but it does give you time to figure out what next steps should be. Even if next steps means pause, shut down, sell the business, whatever. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where you feel like you have no other option, or you feel like you've done so much and kept going when really what you needed to do was pause, or really what you needed to do was pivot and not stick to, well, this is what I said I was going to do forever, kind of a thing. So that was a mouthful. Don't know if I fully answered you, but
you definitely did. I just want to recap. I again, so much of what you've said has been shared before, but in a different way. So I love that there's synergy within the way that all the consultants are thinking, and especially around this question, because I do believe it's so important to have mentors. Like, that is powerful, and just your core group people, whether they're, whether they're employed with you or not, that you can talk to and get ideas and get connected. And then that resources aspect of really taking the time to make space to do that research, to look for other opportunities, because they are harder to find and can be hidden. And that research is important, but making space for that so that you're not kind of scrambling in that way. And then that last point of the reflection, because I think so many times we can spin off into the frustration of like, why is this happening to me? Or why am I not able to, move past these barriers? Or, I'm kind of getting hit all these different ways, and not taking a space and be like, this is just what it is. It was like this before I came into it. It will be like this, we're making changes, but it will be like this. And I think, taking that moment to kind of remove the personalization to say, what are my next steps? Go back, look at my values. Am I able to uphold these right now in the way I'm working in my business? How do I need to pivot? I think that all those things are important. And when it comes to an HR, you can write these are policies you can create for yourself in the beginning so that you don't get run down or beat up by the system that is not designed for you to always feel taken care of and grow in your business. I think these are things that we have to realize as people of color, we got to put in place for ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, I think sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the other important thing here too is to realize that A, it's not just happening to you, but B, you want to get in community with other business owners. You know, there's always going to be someone that came before you, and there's always going to be someone after, right? So you're going to want to be able to share the information, share the nuggets. Like I have so many friends that have started businesses, and they were able to skip over a couple of hurdles because they had a conversation with them, like, look out for this, or make sure that you're not, burning yourself out, right? Even just naming that as a look out for this big thing. You're gonna want to, in the early months of your business, you're gonna want to do everything because the money is so attractive. But if you are tired, exhaustion, stress, you will be in the hospital, right? And so for someone to say that to you very bluntly, like, do you want to put in 24 hours of work this month and be okay to go to the next month? Or do you want to put in 40 hours and can't work for 3 months, right? To have those very frank, open conversations and to have someone say that to you is just like, oh, wow, I didn't think about it like that. Let me relax, or let me make adjustments. And so it really is important to find like-minded business people, even if they themselves are not business oriented, they don't have their own business. They have the mindset to be like, okay, I studied law, so I can tell you got to make sure that you have certain things so that you stay in compliance, right? Down, like the way you recruit people, the way you bring them on, the way you promote them, the way you pay them, the way you fire them, all of those things have like implications. And so to have an emotionally frustrating situation happen and you just like, you know what, I'm gonna do whatever I want, can't do that, right? And so all of those things, all of them have an impact on how you navigate challenges and how you communicate that to your employees and to potential funders, whomever. You need to be able to communicate well, and having a community of people kind of makes that happen, because you theoretically would constantly be in communication with these people, maybe monthly, maybe y'all have a quarterly meetup, and you want to be in a cohort where open, honest conversation is minimum, right? Minimum entry.
Right. Yeah. And I love that you use the term cohort as well, because it really is someone like a group of people that have your best interests, that are maybe in similar places, maybe a little bit ahead, but that y'all can really share and think through these things. And I'm going to do a shameless plug right now, because if you don't have that, Help Desk is here. I cannot tell you how when I, started working at ABC and heard about like the resources and something in this program, it made me very excited, because I think that so many times, creatives, especially Black people and people of color, we will, like you said, I'm going to carry this on my shoulders by myself, by hook or by crook. I'm going to make this happen because I have this dream, and I don't want anyone to take it from me. Right. I don't want to share too much. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's important that you got to share with somebody. Right. And because this, like we said, the system is what it is. And so it is designed not with you in mind. Right. And so if you don't have a cohort, if you don't have a community of people that you can really talk openly and honestly with about, things that in your business or some problems or challenges that you're having, then Help Desk is here for you. 7 different consultants with so much expertise, especially in HR with you. The things that you're talking about. And I want to get into a little bit more detail in my last question. Just thinking around specific policies and like thinking about how strategically how that starts from my mission into my values, into an actual policy and how that looks in my culture is so important. And that scaffolded way of thinking, not everybody has that, right? Yeah. And as a business owner or someone starting out, you probably don't even think that maybe is not important, but you do need someone who is thinking in that way. And so having access to you and many of the resources that Help Desk is offering, it's just, I don't know, it's priceless in my opinion, to be able to just.
But it's literally priceless because it's free.
Correct.
So there's
correct.
that.
It's free. So if you have not signed up, you have not taken the time, please schedule one-on-one with Ronteau. It's just so much knowledge and helping you think out strategically, even in the beginning stages of how you can navigate and start to build your cohort with these consultants, I think is important to say.
I will say, and I know you didn't ask your question yet, but what I want to say is that people tend to not, let me backtrack. A lot of times when you start a business, you don't feel like you need HR right away because there are these days a gazillion apps that you can get that's going to do payroll. It's going to do everything for you. But what people don't really realize with that is that apps are not meant to replace the person, right? The person is there to do the strategy work, and having the apps frees up our time from doing the admin work that the apps do. And so when you have an HR person on staff, or even like talking to me, you get to do that strategy work. Like the HR person is gonna be like, okay, I see how our culture is here. I see what policies we have here. If we want to get from point A to point B, this is what we need to do from my perspective. And you end up, if you don't think about HR in that way, there's so much that you miss out on. Like you miss out on just our general expertise on what it means to be an employee, what it means to engage with someone, an exchange of ideas for money, like all of those little things that we take for granted because we've all worked at a place. You just see it happen. You come into an organization and everything is set up, but it had to start from somewhere. And you can't rely on an app necessarily to do that for you. And you don't also want to wait for a huge situation to happen and be like, we need a policy. You want to kind of imagine the things that could happen and let us take initiative and try to not assume the worst in people. People will be people, right? People are always going to look for a gray area. They're always going to look for it. You don't want them to find a gray area. So you just, you preload as much as you can. And lastly, HR is here to kind of help the business get to its goals and its objectives by making sure that people understand the parameters of their particular job, but also what the org's intention is. Like, why do you exist? What is your purpose of employing other people? We do all that. HR is very key for that. So I don't know what your last question was, but
okay. No, this is I love that you recapped that, because I do think that we, think it's just writing policies or just, dealing with handbook, but it is about especially having someone in the flesh and not an application, is that ability to discern and be strategic. And I think that you said that beautifully. My last question, because I'm curious about this, I would love if you could share maybe an anecdote or something that you really experienced, or a hypothetical, just to kind of help us and to think about like how a mission translates into a value, into a policy and practice, so that like maybe there was an experience where you had, where you were like, we're working with an organization and they said, well, our mission is this. And then then that meant that, what are the many different values, or what is the value that comes out of that? And then what is an actual policy that then can be put in place? And thinking that, walking us through that scaffolded way of thinking, maybe an example that you've done before, or something else, just to kind of help us visualize, that point A to point B move of the way of strategically thinking, because if we're not going to have someone, if it's not someone else, it's us, right? That has to be thinking in this way. So could you walk us through how to start thinking it in this way, when putting HR practices or that lens on the work of having your own business?
I think that's a tough question, particularly because I know this is geared towards arts, and
Yeah.
I am, well, I won't say I'm not an artist, right? Of course, of course I sing, all these things, but I'm not functioning off of my talents in that kind of a way. And so all of the examples that I'm thinking about is very much related to nonprofit world, where it's like, okay, our mission is to, I don't know, clean water, right? You want to get clean water to a particular community. And so to do that, of course, you need to have a bunch of people. I'm imagining this organization has to have, let's say at minimum 5 people working in their local community to get clean water out to serve community or whatever. So your mission is to provide clean water. Your value, it could be something like accountability. You want the community to be able to hold you accountable. If I say we are doing a water drive, I don't even know if those are things, right? But if you're saying we are bringing clean bottles of water every Thursday comes and I'm not here. Hey, but you promised us, you said that you were going to do X, Y, and Z. So if you're going to uphold a value of accountability, it means that your communication lines are clear. So it means something like you have a policy in that response times to community members, 48 hours max, right? Or if it's that, within the organization itself, you might have a policy of you can't take water home because we are giving it to the underserved community, something like that. So I'm not like,
no, but I like that. No, because I think that people don't understand that, like, the mission, or at least not, that I want to make it very clear that how this is all interwoven. It's not a separate thing. The mission has to feed into the value, which feeds into an actual policy that
how we work, for sure.
How you work and how you hold that. And that is outwardly facing to the community that you serve. And it could be inwardly facing to your employees and the people that are working with you to provide that service.
For sure. And then it will also dictate who your vendors are, right? Like if you want, I'm trying to figure out a company that's always like it does well, but it might not support all people. But you are saying, oh, but let's say we are a LGBTQ friendly company, but you're vending from someone who is anti, like those types of things. All of those decisions have to circle back to, well, we said we are supporting this particular community. So we can't then give the little bit of dollars that we have to this water company who might be charging us like nothing, but openly hate LGBTQ people.
Right.
It can't work, right? Because these days people are checking your financials. People are going to your board. You got to walk the talk, right? So down to who you vend with, who you employ, who you bring to your board, right? Like all of these things have implications on the business that you're doing. So, I mean, that might feel really big and it feels far, right? Especially because if you're just starting, you're not thinking about a board. You're not thinking about vendors, because as of right now, you are the vendor. You are the employee. You're the everything. So it's like, all right, well, I'll get to it when I get to it. But you want to make sure that from the moment you bring on person B, because you're person A, the moment you bring on person B, y'all have an understanding as to this is the boundary. We are not spending our dollars on this company who is going against what we are supporting, right? We're not going to cut corners because it's just easier and cheaper. No, we're gonna work in excellence every single time, right? That's a value. Excellence is a value.
Yeah.
Making sure that all your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed. Making sure that you do the same service every single time, every single way, right? It's not like, oh, I know Bob, so I'm gonna just go ahead and give him 2 bottles, although we said we're giving 4. No, you're treating everyone, I wouldn't say exactly the same, but you're committing to what you said you're gonna do. And you're not cutting corners because this is my friend or this is my family. No, you are offering your service the same exact way as though you were doing a blindfolded test. Everybody gets the same thing. And it has to be done in a way that is excellent every single time. Do not cut corners.
Correct. Because that is your value.
Right.
And that is, and that translates it. And that level of like implementation has to be uniform and can be communicated to all the people that are working with you as well, right? And so being able, and I think that too is like, that's what HR also helps you do.
Communication is huge.
Yes.
Written, verbal, the amount of, in my career, the amount of things written, verbal, hinted at, insinuated that causes so much harm. And it's like, oh, but I wasn't rude. Yeah, but you purposely left this person off an email. Or I wasn't being mean, but you did not say hi to this particular person and you good morning to everyone else, right? Like those little itty bitty things get to be huge overall. And so communication, I feel like, is essential. The things that you communicate to your employees, how you communicate that to your employees. You're not doing like a 11th hour, hey, I know it's an off day, but I'm gonna send you this email that I need you to read before you show up to work. Absolutely not. It's not gonna work, right? So it's like, if we're saying that we're valuing people as people, we are respecting their PTO. We're respecting, matter of fact, we're giving them PTO.
Right.
We're respecting when they're off. So like for me, I'm very big with, and they know my team, if you are off, I don't care if there is a fire, you're off. Like, I'm not gonna make you stop vacationing because one email no, your time is respected. And if for whatever reason you actually do need to talk to this person, then you should be willing to give them their time back, right? That is how you value people. You don't just pretend that it was just an hour. No, but that hour is still time that needs to be accounted for. So I think that there's a balance to feeling like everything has to be done in a certain amount of time, but also just respecting that people come to work or come to your business with their own baggage, or they might be building their own business too, right? And so you don't want to overextend them or expect that your drive is going to be matched across your employees, because that's not the case.
Yes, that's so true.
That's huge. Like, I think people start businesses and they're like, okay, if I get everyone on board my mission, we're all going to work 7 days a week. No, I could support your mission all day, but baby, when it's Saturday and Sunday or whatever your business hours are, when those are done, respect the person to take that time. Respect the person to need downtime too. Even if you never stop, you can't assume that no one else is going to stop, right? And so I think that's a challenge that new businesses tend to find or like experience, because you just assume that your mission is that great that people are going to want to just keep on going.
Come on.
You need a break too. You need a break.
And that's the thing. That goes back to your earlier point, that if you are thinking about yourself first, if you put these things in place first, and you know that you yourself have, value rest, and that you've got to put that across the board, and your rest may not look like everybody else's rest.
That's the 1 and the 2.
Come on.
Because rest for me could be just watching TV, chilling. Rest for somebody else is, I need 48 hours of silence because I'm just going, 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 going. Like, you have to respect that. People will come to work with their own boundaries. They'll come to work with their interpretation of what it means to be a great worker. And if you don't tell people what you expect from them, they're not going to just get it by osmosis. Like, and that's why I keep saying, like, communication is so key. And then what I'll lastly say is, or not lastly, but because we can talk forever, but I feel like when you start out a business, I think it's very important to imagine not necessarily end goal, but like comfort. So, okay, how do you imagine the org chart to look? What departments do you imagine that you need to be super successful? How do you imagine that people are going to join this organization? Do you expect volunteers? Do you expect interns? Do you expect actual employees who you are paying and giving benefits to? Or are you just contracting people? All of the ways that you engage with people have to kind of be thought out. And of course, these things can change, but you want to think, of course, it's just you in the moment. So you just do whatever makes sense for you. But I think it's really important to imagine a business of at least 5 people and how that would work.
Yeah.
And then be like, okay, well, let me start to dial back and implement things for myself now for the 5, so that you don't have to take that break, like I was talking about, to do that later, because you'll lose momentum.
I like that. That's a great strategy to think about, just even if it's just you, 5 of you.
How do you manage these 5 people?
Mm-hmm.
How are you thinking about how they should interact with each other? What type of meetings do we need to have? Do we need to meet in person? Is it okay if we meet remotely? What benefits do I need to offer, especially these days, right? How am I paying? What am I paying? Am I doing a market analysis, or did I just pull this number out of thin air because it felt nice? What tools can I use? What do I want people to learn as they are here? How do I develop these people? Because I hope that they stay. They're not going to stay forever, but you want that when they are here, they are super engaged and they are performing well and they are giving their best. All of these things, these little questions help to prompt policies. They help to prompt your sense of who I absolutely need to have to work this business.
Yeah. And I love that you said, even if they're volunteers, even if they're interns, anytime you're engaging anybody. And so putting yourself in that position is really, really going to ensure that you are thoughtful in the ways that you start to build and move. Ronte, this has been such a great conversation. Seriously. Because we've, said this many times, and even tonight about HR being the forgotten.
It is. And we also get such a bad rap.
Yeah.
And I get it, right? Because in some organizations, they are absolutely out to get you. But it's very important that you document your stuff. Like documentation on either side.
Correct.
Side, right? You see your growth, or you see, oh, I'm heading down a wrong path, right? It works either way. And so HR gets a bad rap. It will not, deter me from continuing on the path that I'm on in terms of my HR career. But I feel like if people really got a sense of how much HR champions our employees, like, because if you weren't here, we could not exist. Like, if the employees were not here, the whole company does not exist. And so it's like, how do I, for me at least, my mission going into any job is, how do I make the people want to come back every single day? Like, what can I implement or change or remove to ensure that people have what they need from the organization, and that it's a good balance of give and take.
Yeah. Yes. And again, I'm going to say this: if you do not have a strategic thinking partner, when you're thinking about human resources, when you're thinking about people and how you're going to engage with them, this is a great resource. Help Desk is a great resource. Absolutely. Going until December 2nd. Ronteau Coppin is available. Her schedule and her availability is on our website. please take the time and do yourself the service of getting involved in ways that are going to be, foundational and building, because it doesn't, no one gets an award or a medal for just like taking it all on their shoulders.
Right.
And this is a great group, and you're an awesome champion for people and wanting to specifically help POC businesses succeed. And so I'm excited, and I cannot say enough. So I'm going to share my screen to make sure everyone knows. I'm going to remind everyone at home, Ronteau Coppin, People and Culture Manager. Again, help desk. If you are seeing this QR code, you can scan it while you're watching this YouTube live and sign up. You can sign up and then you can register. We have one-on-ones with our consultants, with Ronteau. You can meet with her. We have watching this video again to just kind of get these gems in your, down for yourself as you're reflecting and reviewing some things and how you want to move. And then we also have our business partner, Creative Art World Learning and a creative study. And they have created an amazing array of courses, 30-minute courses, videos from consultants with kind of like some practice and worksheets and just ways of actually tangibly applying what you learn in these 30-minute courses with consultants and business professors from Columbia, NYU, that really are just dropping gems of information as well on how to strategically think about human resources and other challenges you may be facing in your business. So I encourage you to do all of those things and sign up for Help Desk. Again, we're open until December 2nd, and Ronteau is available. And I just want to thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen to say thank you again for your time. Thank you for your knowledge. And I can't wait to have more conversations with you.
Yes, thank you for having me. And as Mixie said, I am available. It's free. Pull up. There's so much I can talk about and share.
Come on. All right. Everyone have a great night and thank you.
Good night.